Hi everyone, here's a quick review video to help you organize your review process for the first quarter quiz. These are the things that you need to know, right? You need to know all your major and minor key signatures fluently. You need to be able to figure out intervals, both simple and compound. These are things that you learned in MAT, but you're hopefully continuing to get better at them. You need to be able to spell chords from any root, any of these type of chords. So if I ask you for F sharp major 7, you can spell it right away. If I ask you for A flat dominant 7th, you can spell it right away. You need to know the tensions and harmonic avoid notes in diatonic chords and secondary dominant chords. You need to know the diatonic major key harmony, 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, etc., and be able to build that in any key. And you need to know all your 5 secondary dominants in any key and be able to generate what they are in that key. Most of this can be reinforced by practicing with my theory practice document, which is right here, which I'll link also under this assignment, where you can practice your key signatures, you can practice your intervals, you can practice your chord spelling, etc. Things you should have memorized: your diatonic major key harmony, right? What are the order of the chords? What are their Roman numerals? Be able to think about them in any key. You must be able to write and label chord scales for any diatonic chord. Let's quickly review that. The process there is to simply write out the chord tones first, then write out the surrounding diatonic notes, label them. So for example, in this test here, you're being asked to write, in the key of E flat, you're being asked to write the chord scale for 4 major 7. You're in the key of E flat, so you have to know what the 4 chord is. It's right there in the piece of music. So you spell out those chord tones, and in chord scales we write whole notes. So we hopefully know that the 4 chord in E flat is A flat major 7. So you write out the chord tones of A flat major 7. You label the chord tones of A flat major 7. You must always label the notes in a chord scale. If you don't label them, it's not a chord scale. Then you put in the surrounding, in the case of a diatonic chord, you put in the surrounding diatonic non-chord tones, the notes that are in between the chord tones. And then you label those, and we use, for non-dominant chords, we use the formula: if a note is a whole step above a chord tone below it, it's an available tension, and if it's a whole step above the root, it will be T9. If it's a whole step above the major third, it will be T sharp 11, and if it's a whole step above the perfect fifth rather, it'll be T13. If it had been a half step anywhere, it would be a harmonic avoid note and would be labeled with the letter S. Then, in this case, you would put the scale name, A flat Lydian, and the available tensions, 9, sharp 11, and 13. You also need to be able to do it with secondary dominants. With secondary dominants, it's the same process. The only difference is that the available tensions can be any form of 9 or any form of the 13, flat 9 or major 13, because dissonant notes are actually an attribute, a good thing on secondary dominants. So we have a 5, 7, a 6 here. You figure out what's 5, 7, a 6 in the key of A flat. If you know what 6 is, you can go up a fifth to find the root of the secondary dominant. 6 in the key of E flat is C minor. Go up a fifth from C minor. What do you get? G. G7 is 5, 7 of 6 in the key of E flat. You now do the chord scale, chord tones first. Make sure to be careful, because you will always require at least one accidental when you're building a chord scale, secondary dominant chord scale, that is. So the third of a G7 is actually G natural, so we have to make sure we get that in there. And we label our chord tones: 1, 3, 5, flat 7. And then we put in our diatonic non-chord tones. Diatonic non-chord tones with secondary dominants, just the way you have diatonic non-chord tones with diatonic chords. And then you label those. Now, you're always going to have S4. That's never going to change in any secondary dominant chord scale. You're always going to have S4 right here, harmonic avoid note S4. So that one you shouldn't really have to think about. And if you're handwriting, you can make that a solid note head. Oops. So I can't turn that solid right now, but just pretend that's solid because that should be a solid note head. Okay, then you put, you label the other notes, and if it's a whole step above a chord tone, it's a T9. If it's a half step, it's a T flat 9. Both are available. A flat above G is a half step, so it's T flat 9. If this note is a half step above the perfect fifth, it's T flat 13. If it's a whole step, it's T 13. E flat above D is half step, so it's T flat 13. Now, in any scale that has a flat 9, there's always a potential extra note. This is called an optional tension. It's right here. It's the diatonic minor third in a dominant chord scale, but it's not called a minor third. It's called T sharp 9. So in a test situation, you don't necessarily have to put this in unless the question asks for include optional tensions. The name of this scale with the sharp 9 included would be mixo. Flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13. If you hadn't included the sharp 9, it would just be mixo flat 9 and flat 13. Okay, that's a reminder of how to do secondary dominant chord scales. You need to know the available tensions on any diatonic chord from memory. You need to know the available tensions on all 5 secondary dominants. You need to know that the tensions on secondary dominants are all diatonic. There is an optional choice of using flat 9 on 5/7 of 2 as a non-diatonic addition, but you don't have to do that. To memorize them, you remember major to major, minor to minor. Major secondary dominants that are going to major tensions, major chords rather, 5/7 of 4 and 5/7 of 5, have major tensions, 9 and 13. Secondary dominants which are going to minor chord targets, 5/7 of 3 and 5/7 of 6, have minor tensions. And the exception is 5/7 of 2, which has a mixture of a major 9 and a minor 13. You have to understand the concept of tension substitution in four-way close. 9 for 1, 11 for 5, 13 for 5. You should do the practice tests given and check your answers. So, looking at the practice test quickly, where is it? This first activity, you have to figure out what the chords are. All the roots are in the bass. Figure out what they are and analyze them with Roman numerals graphics. Always look for a root in the bass, then look for a third, then look for a seventh, then there may or may not be a fifth, and then look for any available tensions that might be in the chord instead of a fifth or a root. The root will be in the bass, but it won't always be in this harmonic layer up here. In this activity, you simply analyze the chord symbols. Here, you probably won't encounter this on the test, but this is just a thought process where you have to come up with a secondary dominant that goes to its expected target and make sure the notes work with each chord. Here, you need to know your secondary dominants well and what their available tensions are. Again, they are diatonic tensions. The only accidentals you'll use are in spelling the secondary dominant chord itself, but the tensions will always be diatonic. Here you analyze the chords and then you do four-way close voice leading, but you have to include tension substitution so that you include at least 8 tensions over the course of all these chords. And finally, here you have to write chord scales, both diatonic and secondary dominant chord scales. So that's it in a nutshell, and the way you're going to get credit for watching this video is you're going to see that in the assignment there will be a link to a form, a Google form. You're going to click on that and it's going to look like this, and you're going to go down and answer the questions. down here, and it's like a little quiz, okay, answering questions about available tensions, secondary dominants, chord scales, things like that. What's this second chord in the, Billie Eilish song? Stuff like that. True and false questions, etc., etc. If you really know your stuff, this quiz will probably only take you about maybe 15 minutes. But if you are not so clear on things, well, use that as a way to remind yourself to go and review and study. Okay, that's it. Have fun, and I'll see you for the quiz on the next class.